Yay, there we are.
There we are. So for our video purposes, we're just going to go ahead and say that one more time. I'm Jenny, Enneagram 1.
And I'm Kelly, Enneagram 6.
And we are talking about Jamie and Claire, who are characters on Outlander today, one of our favorite book series and shows. Super excited. I have loved Outlander from the beginning. I think you were the one that recommended it to me back in 2020.
Yes, in 2020 I discovered the first book, and Outlander got us through the pandemic.
Yeah, along with some other things. So we
Yeah.
started Enya Sisters. We did a lot that year.
Yes.
So we love Outlander, and the characters that we're going to be talking about today will be Claire and Jamie because they are the main characters. They're from the beginning all the way to the end. In fact, I have the newest book that came out this past October. So psyched. I'm halfway through it already, and it doesn't disappoint. So it stays true to the original, which I love. So first and foremost, since we are the Enya Sisters, we're going to talk about their Enneagram types.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've kind of went back and forth on this because there's mixed reviews, them being popular characters in pop culture. You can look this up online or Pinterest or wherever, and you'll see that a lot of people have guessed what Enneagram number is Claire, what Enneagram number is Jamie. And we don't really agree with all of them, and we'll tell you why.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start with Claire. You want to go?
Yeah.
She's my favorite.
So we believe that Claire is an Enneagram type 1.
Yep.
She's a body type. She's very intuitive and leads with her feelings. And underlying in all the body types, as we know, is anger, which shows up in Claire a lot when she's frustrated. You see her inner critic also, which is a type 1 thing.
Yeah.
So when she's getting frustrated and angry, it's not usually at other people. It's usually about herself.
Right.
And she's not living up to her expectations.
Right. And spoiler alert, if you have not seen or read Outlander, we are going to be giving away some pictures of the episode. I keep wanting to say film. It's not a film. Episodes and the books. There will be some spoilers. So if you're afraid of that happening, press pause and go to our next episode, which will probably be about completely different characters.
Yeah.
What I loved about Claire is even from the beginning, she's always wanting to do what's right.
Yes.
Which is such a type 1 thing. Even when it's dangerous. I mean, there were times when she's healing people who killed someone that she cared about,
Yeah.
and she's like, well, this is my duty. This is what I need to do,
Right.
is to heal this person. And I remember, I think it was I don't know what episode, but season 3, when she comes back and she almost gets raped in that one episode. Well, this guy comes after her. I don't know if that was the intention, but it happened a lot back then, unfortunately. And she ends up almost killing him, remember?
Yeah.
And Jamie comes in and they just want to get rid of the body. And she's like, no, my duty is to save his life.
Right.
And I know that's kind of like above and beyond. Not every type 1 is going to do that, but it's her internal desire to do what's right.
Yeah. She has a very strong moral compass.
Yes.
And very much cares about that. And also in, I think it's season 1, she challenges the leaders who are going to collect taxes. And she's concerned about these families that are just barely surviving. They can't afford to pay taxes, and she wants to stand up for them because she feels that is the right thing to do.
Yes.
So she's always standing up for not only underdogs, but when she sees black and white, this is the right thing to do. She's going to stand up for it.
She's very resolute about it. And being that it's the 1700s, she kind of goes, I don't think she purposely undermines Jamie, but remember in that situation, she's like, oh, it's okay. You don't have to pay.
Right.
And Jamie's like,
That's
you're not supposed to do that,
Right.
So his personality shows up in that instance, which we'll go back to Claire, but what do we think Jamie is?
So I think he's a type 7. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. Definitely a head type. You don't always see the fear, but the head triad is in the fear triad. And I think the way that manifests is through him avoiding emotional pain.
Yeah.
and just moving on to the next thing.
Right. Keeping himself busy. You definitely don't always see his fear come alive within himself, but he fears other people's safety.
Yes,
Like
for
he's
sure.
always protecting the people around him, you know, whether it be, of course, Claire, but other characters too. I mean, he's
Right.
always looking out for the other people. And I think that's where we see his fear, because he definitely does not want anything to happen to those people.
Right.
That kind of protection that we often do see in sevens over other people, their people, their inner circle,
Right.
but not necessarily the fear coming out of himself. Like he
Yeah.
would sacrifice himself for fear of someone else getting hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it comes out in a very self-sacrificial way, which isn't always the same with all sevens, but it definitely is a characteristic of a seven.
Yeah.
Very self-sacrificial. However, sometimes they're doing it to avoid pain,
Right.
to avoid really going through those emotions.
For sure.
Since we know now that Claire, and going back to Jamie, a lot of people think he's an 8, so we could kind of touch on this.
Yeah.
We don't think he's an 8 because we think that countries have numbers.
Right.
And we'll probably do a podcast just on this, but we thought that Scotland was maybe an 8, right?
Right. Very strong and bold and expressive of their feelings, whether it's going to hurt other people or not.
Yes, exactly. And that's just their culture, right? They're brought up and raised to be these tough, warriors, and they fight for what they believe in. And so they come off very raw as people in general, as their culture.
Right.
But then when we dug a little bit deeper, we see that Jamie actually has characteristics of a 7, even though he's still that strong Scottish person.
Right. It's
Yeah.
hard to see that other layer, but
Yes, yeah. And we can go on and on about the other countries, but we won't. But that's just kind of insight into why we typed him as a 7, because if you do look it up, you're going to see a lot of people will type him as an 8.
Right.
But again, I think if you did that, all of them are 8s.
Yeah.
Like if we go down the line, his sister feels like an 8, his brother-in-law, I mean,
Yeah, the whole clan feels 8.
Yeah.
Because they're very strong-willed people.
exactly. So while we'll go back into Claire and Jamie, but while we're here talking about individual types, let's go ahead and go a little bit deeper into the types.
Okay.
So if you don't know Enneagram very well and you haven't listened to our first season of Enneagram, you won't know what a type 7 is. So type 7, they are kind of the entertainer. They definitely want to have fun. Their goal is to have fun, make everything an adventure. But they are in the thinking triad. So they are going to be thinking through things. This is how they perceive the world. This is how they take in the world, is through thinking. And so going back to Jamie, a lot of times, whether you're reading or watching, he is thinking through things.
Yeah.
He's very much pondering like his actions. He's not just instinctually doing something like an 8 would.
Right. And then he's also in the aggressive stance, which means even though he's taking in the world through thinking, he's getting what he wants in the world through being aggressive, through being a challenger, through being future-oriented.
Yes, which if you haven't heard any of our conversations about stance, 7s are in the aggressive stance, 8s and 3s as well. But unlike what we commonly think of as aggressive, a lot of people think of that as a negative word. When we say aggressive, we think you're going at someone. You're not afraid to speak up.
Right.
You're not afraid to stand up and say the hard things. And that's what we mean by being in the aggressive stance. And like you said, they're future oriented. So they're planning through future, like what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
What's going to happen, which, it's kind of funny. It makes me think about the whole time thing with him and Claire. Like maybe because he's a 7 and he's in the future stance of being an aggressive, he may understand when she tells him her story better than another number might have.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Because he gets the future. He gets that there is a future, whereas maybe a present person in the 1700s would have been more shocked.
Right.
I never thought about that. I just thought about that just now.
Yeah.
So now ones. What are ones? You kind of touched on this.
Yeah, ones are known as the reformers or the improvers. They naturally, in any environment, will see what needs improved, what could be better. They're very much about right and wrong, have a strong moral compass. They want to do the right thing at all times.
Yes.
They want to be good. They want others to perceive them as good. And they also have that inner critic that's going to be constantly on their mind.
Right. Which you see in, well, all of the episodes, and in the book, you see her constantly questioning, whether she did it right, whether she's doing the right thing in relationship, whether she's doing the right thing when she performs her surgeries.
Yeah. And even when she marries Jamie, she's feeling like, am I cheating on my husband?
Yes.
That's, back
right
in the future, but in my past, he's still alive.
Right. Well, she wears both the rings.
Yeah.
Who would do that? Except for a 1, maybe, like she's maybe a 6 too, because of their loyalty.
Right.
But she won't let go of that ring. And even as a 1, I'm thinking, but now your loyalty lies with Jamie. Like you could let go of the 1, but she couldn't, because the moral compass of technically they're not divorced.
Right.
And technically he's not even born yet, if we're really talking about time, but for her, he was very much still her husband.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the way that Jamie and her got married, it wasn't like, ooh, this long courting romance.
Right.
And now we're in love. Like, it was forced upon her. And so it reminds me of maybe, marriages where the daughter and the son are brought together by the parents, arranged marriages. It kind of feels like that. Like they grew to love each other.
Right.
And she probably held onto that ring for good reason for a long time.
Yeah.
But then being a 1, she still held onto it because she did not have that sense of, he's not my husband anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so it's that duty, that moral compass like you talked about.
Yeah.
And 1s are present. And so being a time traveler, that must be hard.
Yeah, right.
Because you're living in the past that's actually in the future, and you're in the present that's actually your past.
Yeah.
So time gets all switched up. But I think for someone who is in the present, it doesn't so much.
Yeah, because she's just there. She's just fully committed and embraces the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the benefit of it.
Exactly. It's like when I teach bar classes. When I'm in bar, I'm always talking about be in the present, because it's really all that we have.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us because we're both in the present to talk about present. But for people in other stances like Jamie, that would have been challenging.
Yeah.
To just be in the present and to just focus on what's going on when he's constantly thinking about the future.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about now in the second season when she ends up getting pregnant. And remember when she asks him, I need you to promise me not to kill Randall when they find out he's alive.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that was one of the hardest situations for their relationship, because they're married. Technically, Randall doesn't exist. But if this guy, she assumes, dies, then her future husband, who's her past husband, Frank, won't exist. And so she's fighting for the existence of a husband that she may or may not ever see again. It's just so interesting. What did you think about all of that? Like, did you think that he should keep that promise?
I don't know. Not really.
What did you think? What do you think Jamie's thinking as a 7 when she asked him that?
Well, no one else could have asked him that. She's the only one that could have asked him that, and him followed it.
Yeah.
Anyone else, he would have, forget it. I'm killing this guy. I have the opportunity.
Well, and he ends up doing that duel, remember?
Yeah.
And she's so afraid that he's going to die.
Right.
And then she ends up losing the baby. Of course, all these things roll into happenings.
Right.
And going back to Jamie being faced with this question of this guy, and not only was he an enemy, like if you watch season 1, you know that he was defiled in the worst of ways by this guy. And so he felt righted by revenge.
Yeah.
And so she, in his mind, took it away from him.
Right.
And all in his mind, that was the way for him to become whole again. Even though that's not true.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're going to get into strengths and stress points.
Yeah, we
but,
can.
Jamie and Claire are an interesting couple because they share a line on the enneagram. And so what that means is that Jamie goes to type 1 when stressed. And so he's going to be that black and white, resentful anger is going to come out in the worst kind of ways.
Yep.
And so I think he's kind of taking that on when he's seeking revenge.
Yeah. And she goes to 7 in strength. So that's when she lets go and is more carefree. And we see that from time to time, especially when they are in France, when they're together.
Yeah.
Not necessarily when they're apart, because she's dealing with, all these things that she's against.
Yeah.
But in that moment, when he says he will do that, he promises her. He promises her that he will abide by that, even though from the depths of his heart it's against everything that he is. He promises her. But we find out later that he lied.
Yeah.
He was never going to. And maybe he intended to, but then when the moment came, he just couldn't resist.
Yeah.
And we probably won't get into wings, but I do think that could have been an 8-wing thing, like he's in the moment, and 8's being a body type, I'm doing this.
Right.
And I'm going for it because, and like you said, going to 1, going to anger as well. And being very black and white, like,
yeah,
even though she said this is going to be my priority in the moment.
Yeah.
Which is so not him. And again, that's a present thing. So it would be him going to 1, choosing anger.
Yeah.
And not even choosing. I feel like when we're going into our stress, it's not a choice.
Right.
It's a fight or flight moment where you almost can't control it.
Yeah.
Unless you've really thought through it and given yourself the self-care, right?
Right.
That's kind of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So in that moment, if Jamie and Claire really sat down and it wasn't you owe me this, because that's what it came down to. She said, you owe me a life.
Yeah.
So it was more about a black and white mentality as opposed to, will you please do this? Can I appeal to
honor me or
for you to think through this? And maybe it would have been differently.
Yeah, definitely.
So going into self-care, what do 1s and 7s need so that they don't go there? Because we know 1s go to 4.
Right.
And we haven't talked about 4s yet. But what do we see when 1s go to 4?
Well, when 1s go to 4, it's not a good thing.
No. They're dramatic.
They're dramatic. They get kind of way deep into the pit of their feelings, and they can get really melancholy.
So in that instance, don't you think Claire was in 4 and Jamie was in 1?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so she's
Their
super
worst
dramatic.
selves.
Yeah, exactly. And we've all been there. Like, we all get it because we all go to stress.
Yeah.
And if we don't do the proper self-care, then you're just that dragon, right? That lizard brain is on. It's not your thinking. It's all the lizard reaction, and that fight or flight is all you have.
Yeah.
If you have not done the proper self-care.
Right.
So if Jamie and Claire, as we said before, would have worked through this and talked it out, communicated what they're really feeling.
Right.
I do think Jamie tried.
Yeah.
I think he did better than Claire.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, he did a good job at trying to communicate his feelings, which is hard for a 7 because their feelings repressed.
Exactly.
But yeah, 1s, Claire was in 4. What else do we see in 4? So they're dramatic. They're trying to find identity, right?
Yeah.
Definitely not thinking about anybody else.
Right. They're going deeply inward. They're caring about being different, unique, mattering, finding meaning.
Right. And she had found meaning with Frank, right? That was her first husband. And even though now we know in hindsight that Jamie was really her husband, the one that we wanted to be with,
right.
Because she is a 1, she's still honoring marriage.
Yes.
The entity that is marriage. So she honors that. She honors the vow that she made. And even though maybe some other numbers would have been like, you know what? It's 200 years in the past or future. I don't care. Like, this is a new thing. I'm going to let go of that. She honored it to this this really dark place. She
Yeah.
let it take her to a very unhealthy 4 in that moment when she should have been honoring her husband in front of her.
Yeah.
And even though I don't ever recommend killing someone,
Right.
I don't think that she should have been the one to tell him not to.
Yeah.
He should have been able to choose that, you know,
Right.
of his own accord.
Yeah.
So now going into self-care, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, we're all about self-care. That's what we do. We have our self-care guides, which are super helpful. They have checklists. They have self-care for each number.
Yeah.
So what do we say self-care is needed for type 7s?
Well, type 7s, I like to look at where they go in strength for what they need for their self-care. So 7s go to 5, which is a very calming place for them.
Yep.
It's reflective. They're no longer thinking future and next thing. It's a space where they can read and be by themselves and feel good about that.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely journaling, writing down feelings, even though that's not their favorite thing.
Yeah. It can be hard.
Yeah.
It can be hard to start journaling for any of us, especially if you don't like writing or you've put something in your mind that has said that's boring.
Right.
It really just takes starting. Just starting, even if it's, I don't know what to write.
Yeah, and making a habit, maybe setting a timeline. For 5 minutes, I'm just going to write.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and getting away, and that might not be, ooh, I'm getting away to one of our retreats. I mean, we would love that.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just getting away to a walk, like walking around your neighborhood, or if you're near a forest or nature of some kind,
Yeah.
getting out in nature for 5 to 10 minutes can be so healing.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so those are our biggest tips for 7s. Basically, we want to ground you.
Yes.
You need to be grounded. And going back to our characters, if Jamie would have done that, taken a walk in the streets of Paris, I mean, who doesn't want to do that?
Right.
And then came back to Claire, I think that he would have a different perspective on the situation.
Yeah, getting in touch with the 5 senses is very good for aggressive types. Just thinking, you know, what are some things that I see, smell, hear, touch, taste? Those are grounding.
Exactly. And being a thinking type, my mind just went blank. Being a thinking type, you are able then to use thinking in the appropriate way by getting
Right.
away and giving yourself the self-care that you need.
Yeah.
And then type 1s, we're really hard on ourselves.
Yes, you are.
We're so hard on ourselves. If you're a type 1, you know you have that inner critic that's always saying, oh, you didn't do that right. Oh, you're not good enough. All of the messaging that just isn't true.
Yeah.
And we see that in Claire, like you mentioned. So what do you think she should have done? Or what do you think 1s really need?
Well, they need a different kind of escape. For 1s, it's an escape of responsibility, an escape, even going somewhere that's not yours to be in charge of. So not your house, not somewhere where you have things to do. Maybe the next town over for the day.
Yeah. Or even like a staycation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't do a staycation or a getaway, of course our getaways are built in to provide for the self-care that you need. But I notice that when I'm in a staycation, like even if it's a hotel locally, little things like, ooh, I can just like not make the bed.
Right.
I mean, it seems like not a big deal,
Yeah.
but for me as a 1, not making the bed is a huge gift. And being able to like sleep in and not wake up and make a full breakfast, like little things
Right.
that are my day to day, I think for 1s, and we definitely see that in Claire, being able to just be,
Yes.
like you're saying, and be okay with it. I think that's the biggest thing is
Right.
it's hard to be okay with yourself, let alone if someone else is telling you need to do things, but it's hard to be with yourself when you're constantly telling yourself, oh, these are the things that makes me a good person, which are all lies.
Right.
But it's a constant battle. And so without doing that, you're up against too much.
Yeah. So allowing yourself to really let go And you're giving yourself permission that I deserve a break. I don't have to do 25 things or, just having a break from your normal responsibilities.
And even I think another good thing is having a little treat. Like maybe it's a magazine that you love or a book, allowing yourself to do something enjoyable that you don't do out of reason. It's because you just really want to.
Yeah.
And ones rarely allow themselves to do that. So that's a great self-care. Grab a book, grab a coffee, do something that is just joyful.
Yeah. And that's moving into that 7 space of what is going to satiate me, what sounds good, that's just going to feel, like you said, joyful.
And it doesn't have to cost anything. I mean, oftentimes we live in a place where we have a beach, and just going to the beach for me and not having my own space, but being somewhere relaxing, listening to the water, being with you or someone else I love is that joy, is going to that 7. So definitely a let go experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we're not going to go through all the types, of course. Today we're just talking about type 7 and type 1. Is there anything else that we should mention about self-care?
I think it's always important to just be kind of watching yourself and finding that awareness and what do I need right now? And am I being thoughtful? Am I connecting to body, heart, thoughts, mind? Because that is really taking care of your whole self, is when you're connecting all 3.
For sure. Yeah, and we talk about that a lot at our retreats. And even if you pick up our self-guide, our self-care guide, we mentioned connecting body, mind, and soul, because that is the enneagram. Right. When you're healthy, you are connected to all parts of yourself. And when you're continually working on yourself, that's why we included the self-care checklist. When you're doing that on a regular basis, it takes consistency. You're not going to get it overnight, but you will see yourself heal. You will see the people around you heal, and your life will be better because of it.
Yeah.
I mean, just think of all the situations that Claire and Jamie got into. If they would have done the self-care, well, it would be a super boring show and book. But if they would have been doing
They're laying on the beach
now. They're laying on the beach. They're enjoying friends. They're doing all the fun things that we see them do as well. But I actually think I find them more in that space when they go to the continental U.S.
Yeah. And as they're getting older,
yes,
I mean, they've matured.
Yeah, they've
so
matured.
Makes a difference too.
They've found the self-care they need. Yeah. They're leaning into each other more, which is what we hope for everyone.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I think that's all for today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so excited to be starting the new year with self-care, and we'll probably be doing characters from books and movies for at least the first 6 months of 2023. Yeah. So, thanks for listening. Again, if you are interested in getting a self-care guide for yourself, they're super affordable. We have digital and physical copies on our website. We also have our retreat coming up in April. Super excited. Yes. Lake Pend Oreille, beautiful lake escape. Check it out if you actually do want to get away. And other than that, thank you for listening, and we will hope to have you on next time.
Yeah.
Done. Yay!